Spider-Man's future in live-action film is a bit foggy right now, and it's Disney's fault. Here's how Spider-Man's current outlook in the MCU is actually a major blow to Disney, Marvel, and their fans. Oh, come on! We can all agree that Spider-Man has a successful history in film for the last 20 years or so, no? Well, at least financially successful. Spider-Man Far From Home, a co-production between the Disney-owned Marvel Studios and Spidey film rights holder Sony Pictures, was the first Spider-Man film and the first Sony Pictures film to gross over $1 billion worldwide. The current story goes is that Disney wanted a little bit more of that dough after Far From Home's theatrical run. Disney proposed a new deal that would divide the earnings of any Sony-distributed Marvel Studios Spider-Man film by 50-50 for the two companies, instead of the 95% and 5% for Sony and Disney respectively. Sony wasn't going to have any of that and decided to terminate any future deal of working with Disney and Marvel on any Spider-Man film in the near future, ending the 4-year agreement between the two companies. This was the agreement that gave Disney and Marvel Studios the permission to use Spider-Man in films like Captain America Civil War and Avengers Endgame, while letting Sony and Columbia Pictures use the character as they have been for the past decade or so. Sony was also able to use characters that Marvel has the rights to for films like Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. These events hit social media and fans of the character hard, with many different reactions and endorsements coming from ordinary people who like Spider-Man and from bigger names like Jeremy Renner, Kevin Smith, and Joan Lee. The last one being the daughter of Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee, who publicly criticized Disney and Marvel in light of this announcement for the treatment of Stan Lee's creative works in the months after his passing in November of 2018. So the news is out, but I don't see this as a bad thing. Not necessarily. Spider-Man is still a bankable character, and the potential to make great movies with him is still possible. Other people think that it is a bad thing, which I get in some aspects. Perhaps this was coming off things like the next Spider-Man film in this series not being announced at the Marvel Studios Phase 4 panel at SDCC last month, and the Disney-Fox merger finally going through in the weeks before that. But Tom Holland is still ready and contractually obligated to play Spider-Man at least one more time in his own movie. It's just that the film will have to ignore anything that Disney owns and be expelled from the current MCU continuity. I know that is a big deal for some people, but it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Many people applauded Sony for sticking to their guns in the face of the Walt Disney Corporation, which is alright. But for those who don't know, when it comes to Spider-Man, Disney and Marvel still own other aspects and certain legal rights to the character, namely television, video games, some merchandising ones, and yes, even comic books and print material. They still make those. I get the fact that people are worried about a film series they like, especially after how the last Spider-Man movie ended. And I get the fact that some people are happy that one of the most powerful entertainment companies in the world just lost one thing that would make them play keep away with people and others trying to make something unique and meaningful out of it. Run-on sentences are not your friend, kid. Look up Disney's history in advocating change in copyright law. Not all of it is great. With the Disney and Fox merger that just wrapped up this year, I and many other people feel that the mouse is getting way too big. Not just for their own good, but for the good of what gets made and released for the public. It's business, but also for artistic reasons. Having a singular entity in charge of the modern-day mythology of a culture isn't necessarily great long-term, but I guess we'll have to see how this plays out. Yeah, I would have liked certain Marvel and Lucasfilm rights to go back to companies under the Disney banner, but not at the expense of there being one less provider of film and television entertainment. It's a bit complicated. I don't expect every movie or show to come out of everybody to be good, or even made for myself or my audience. But I think creative expression is important and that we should try and experiment in reasonable ways. But Disney should have kept the deal as is, not for the benefit of their business, but for the benefit of their brand, or rather, their fans. Be it the Marvel ones, the Disney ones, the Marvel under Disney ones, whatever. I am Groot. I mentioned this before, but can you think of any other Marvel Comics character with the widespread popularity, notoriety, and appeal like Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man? Many come close, but it's hard to think of another, especially one that is popular with younger kids. Yeah, like I know what is completely going on with the youth nowadays. Keeping this arm of the Spider-Man brand largely intact under the partnership with Sony Pictures would seem to me like a sign of trust among your fans. Under this deal, Spider-Man can cross over in films similar to the Avengers, and you get a pretty solid film series going that will draw in people to buy merch and talk about it on social media. I guess this is me saying that Disney got a little greedy and accidentally just hindered some brand synergy with one of the most recognizable fictional characters in the world. I get that businesses need to make money, but your audience and their perception of you also matters as well. That is ethos. Disney had something that worked with this agreement. It wasn't perfect, but I think it produced something that people like, no matter what came before, during, or after. They will still make that third Tom Holland Spider-Man film, and I think that Sony can make a good film by themselves. It was cool to see Spider-Man in these films for the time being, but I still think that there is more to explore with this character even without anything Disney has its hands in. We will see how this plays out in the future, but no matter who is making these films, all I ask is that they are good. Please. Is that too hard? I hope not.